Good morning.
Ya viene amaneciendo, ya la luz del día nos dio. Levantaste de mañana, mira que ya amaneció. Good morning, everybody. It's delightful to see your smiling faces. Continue to enjoy your breakfast and have your coffee, and everybody wake up. I know we're the first group this morning. We hope we can wake you up. It's a difficult panel. We have some people that are very close to the topic of generational trauma and healing that generational trauma. It's my belief that our world will not be able to heal unless we heal that kind of deep-seated trauma. And you know, it goes way back. I mean, you watch Yellowstone and you see how much trauma is induced in just survival back in the day. Same thing with our parents, you know, surviving. And then there's lots of extraneous situations associated with oppression or racism or what is that? Misogyny. Thank you. That's the word I was looking to. My brain's still trying to fire on all cylinders. So we're going to get started here. I want to welcome, with very much pleasure, mucho placer, to have Denise Chávez here. She was to attend last year, and I missed her terribly for not coming, but I joined her in May for her book launch, and this is her book. She has one with her now. And it's Street of Too Many Stories, and I'm sure you'll hear some stories from it. Yes. And then we have Josie Méndez-Negrete, and she wrote just a very, very honest, heartfelt story about growing up with an alcoholic father. And if any of you guys have been around those kinds of situations, you know how hard that is. But I want to start off real quick with a poem that sets the tone of this. Let me get it out of my briefcase. This is one I wrote before my family died. My story is, you know, in this book, Sins of the System, is about when after my nephew shot and killed. He was 15 years old with the brain of a 13-year-old, shot and killed. His father, who was my brother, his mother, and 3 of his siblings. And I knew something was going on in that house, and you know, there was no indication. He wasn't a truant. He, you know, the family was very, very tight-knit, very close. And anyway, but that sort of trauma that I experienced with this, I had experienced before, including growing up. So this is a poem that I wrote years ago. It's called The Anguish of Transformation. Bittersweet pill that transforms the hideous to strength. At the time of wounding, you are in shock. Horror possesses your body like a demon. When you are on the road to transformation, it is a valley of death. There is little life, endless hunger, and searing pain, unconsoling remorse. Walk on. Blow on the coal of the heart. Transcendence is the heart, with faces of wisdom all around, thankful for new life. And the beauty about, you know, and if there is beauty, of this kind of trauma or shock that comes to your system, and I had already been accustomed to that notion, is that, you know, once you've been through it once, you know that once you get to the other side, you can actually be thankful for the gifts that it gave you. It's hard to get there. But I'm going to bring in my most talented guest, and I just wanted to, I'm getting all confused with my notes here. Start with the question, tell me about your experience with generational trauma.
I'm going to stand up. Number one, can I remove this? Oh, there's a loose one. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. It's beautiful to be here with the 12 apostles. There's 12 of you out there. And we had to start. Spirit started with the 12. The Holy Ghost, the Spirit of life is with us this morning. And you're here for a reason. We're here for a reason because you are transmitting the message to those that are not here. And we're here to hold story. Regina, I want to thank you for the courage of your book, for coming to Las Cruces to seek us out 10 months ago when my book came out. Josie is my editor and publisher from Conocimientos Press in San Antonio. The two of them were present for the inauguration of my book, and little did we know, that night that we spoke, I said, let's get together. Let's go and be together on a panel, and this is the transformation and the manifestation of that energy that happened that night. So I thank you, and I thank you, Josie, for coming. And Josie will tell you about her life and story. She's just come back from California. And I've come from Las Cruces through the wind to be here with you. It was hard to leave 45 cats. I have feral colonies and a feral husband. And so it was very hard to drive through that dust to get here. But my book and my experience is growing up with an alcoholic father, and who was an abuser. And when you grow up with alcoholics, everybody in our family were alcoholics. As a matter of fact, a friend said, your book is a meditation on alcoholism. Well, and I took that as a compliment, because the protagonist, and it was a struggle, the battle of the bands. Is Michael the protagonist? Is Linda the main character? Michael did not become the main character because I did not want to kill him at that point. And that was his future. And so Linda Chapa, in my book, Street of Too Many Stories, is an alcoholic. She comes from an abusive background. And I was in Al-Anon for many, many years. And I led workshops, and to come to understand how it is to have that ever-present darkness of a family member. And all my uncles were alcoholics, and then the younger generation were drug addicts, and my cousin went to Vietnam, and he came back, and he's a heroin addict and OD'd, and cousin committed suicide, and so on and so forth. All of our families lived through traumatic experiences. But the thing is, we are here to tell the story. I'm just going to read a little bit from the beginning of the book.
Would this help you?
Yes, okay. Well, this will be fine. Okay. Street of Too Many Stories. It's set in Encantada, New Mexico. Enchanted, it's a play on enchanted land. It has to be a play because we're the place that has the most nuclear warheads here in Albuquerque. This is where they're gonna hit us. This is where the bombs are gonna come. Fort Bliss, here. The enchanted land, how enchanted is it? We're poverty-stricken. We have so many homeless. There was an encampment of homeless right behind the bookstore. People are wandering around with blankets everywhere. We're in a state of siege, folks. Let's wake up. And so the Street of Too Many Stories deals with 4 families in Encantada, New Mexico, and it is about family of healing and trauma. And don't think that the animals aren't involved too. I have Sammy the cat, and pasajero, which means traveler, the dog. But I'll just read a little bit here. The spirits come through in the book. The ancestors will look through the windows. Your grandmother might be there. She might come in the form of a white butterfly. You'll find a heart-shaped stone that's your grandfather saying hello. So in this street of stories, the ancestors come, they say hello, they wander off, they come in and check and see how you're doing, and they say, well, a ways to go. But here we are, street of too many stories. And this symbol of water headlines every section of the book. I found this online, and I have never been able to see this symbol ever again. I think it came out from the ether. It's not Mayan, I don't know where it is, it just appeared, and I've never seen it ever again. So I say it's a blessing of an image. Okay, I'm just gonna read a tiny little bit. So my own experience is a small town, a small street, 4 families, Encantada, New Mexico. The street remembered everything. Once there was no street, only cotton fields. And before that, empty land with tall grass the height of a man's waist. Once the Rio Grande ran through what was later to become the street and overfilled its banks. There were floods and new arroyos formed. There were years of drought. Animals died without water, and men and women found no shade. Brother killed brother. Hermanos indígenas were butchered by those who would colonize them. A wind blew through the road. Settlers came from Mexico looking for gold, a new life. El Camino Real de la Tierra Adentro, it was called. The royal road to the interior land, a road of suffering and death. It was called La Jornada del Muerto. The vultures came and ate the carrion. The ancestors flew through the air in the forms of crows. And sometimes the sky was dark with the beating of their wings. Sunrises were blindingly beautiful. And the sunsets brought tears to a man's eyes. The land was rich, pristine, full of promise. Land gave way to water. The land was ancient, undiscovered by anyone except the life that inhabited it. And now the street was inhabited by a few families, all of them like crows, flapping, cackling, crying. The street remembered everything. The street remembered everything. The street remembered everything. And I'll stop right there, but it's the sense of time. If you look at this beautiful image by the artist, the street goes into the mountains. It has that antediluvian energy. You see the failed wedding dress, the wedding dress that brought pain and joy. On the other side, you see the piñata, which is a symbol of life. And if you look far in the back, my very favorite image is of that little dog by the water hydrant. He knew his place. And that's little pasajero, the dog that was left behind. And so, are these the Organ Mountains? No. It's a work of fiction. And don't ask me about that, Linda. These are not the organs. This is Encantada, New Mexico, the land of enchantment.
Josie, tell us your story.
Good morning.
Good morning, Josie.
I'm dedicating this to all my relations and my mother in particular. I am wearing the rebozo that she used to swaddle her children. I thought I was pretty loud. It's not.
Now you're better.
I lost my professorial voice. And this is what she carried me in. It is the only gift she kept of my father, although she had 9 children by him. As an academic, I generally don't like to read what I write, but I'm going to read some words to you. At the dawn of 77, owing to the power of grace, I find myself engaging life in ways I would have never imagined. Still, trauma, healing, and survival continue to pave the way on this journey called life. At this age, still a mujer hocicona, a big-mouthed woman, I speak her truths as one who has not been disciplined in the gender expectations of womanhood. Inside a lot of social political spaces, I continue to speak truth to power. Presently, in collaboration with writers to Conocimiento Press, we publish stories that carry narratives that would otherwise never see the light of day. They're not sexy, they don't have the right words, they have the wrong names, and so on. Las Hijas de Juan, Daughters Betrayed was my first book. It depicts our family struggles with violence against girls, women, sisters, and mother. Despite living in hell, I found beauty in life, in words, songs, poetry, dance, art, and other cultural expressions where I found value as a person. With nicknames accentuating my worth with terms such as la inteligente, la pensadora, y la cabezona. I didn't like that one that much because it implied I had a big head. I embraced my creativity and imagination, generating in me the ability to see the best in myself and others. My second grade educated mother, whom we called Ama, taught me to read with a song, as she did not want me to remain a burra, donkey. A, E, I, O, U. La burra sabe más que tú, giving me the power of voice. When I received an award for my accomplishments, Ama dreamt about it, telling her friends, relatives, and neighbors about my achievements. One time, she even went under the bed to get my little sister who had fallen off to get my certificate of achievement. Song saved me. Art saved me. Poetry, writing, and having people who loved it. But the song that most continues to push me to struggle against misogynist and violent behaviors. For your info, the largest pandemic in the world is sexual abuse against girls, but boys are also included in that. Sexual abuse and incest is the most forgivable because it's a private event inside the home. Okay. So this is the song that at a very early age I learned to see my father as the misogynist and the violent monster that he was. The nickname we gave him was El Cucuy, okay, the monster. With money or without money, I do what I damn well please, and my word is the law. No tengo trono ni reina, ni nadie que me contrenda, but I continue being king. You probably hear it in a lot of mariachi bars, El Rey.
El Rey.
Okay, and that's, as a child, I could see the distinctions and the difficulties. But there was also songs of love. My mother's song of love for my father was Amorcito Corazón. So what's really interesting is that the songs didn't have the same meaning for all of my siblings and all who resided in my house. El Rey was a celebrated song for the father, for the patriarch, and everybody sang it with a lot of gusto. Amorcito Corazón was a song of love for me, but it was a song of torture and violence for my sister, the one that was born after me, whom my father raped and had a child with. Amorcito corazón, yo tengo tentación de un beso que se entregue en el calor de nuestro gran amor. Mi amor. Somehow the Great Spirit is with me. I opened the book and it began in the story that I wanted to tell. It opened into the story I wanted to tell you. It's called The Nightmare Begins. Without a bed, I became the migrant bed sharer. You know, at this age, I can't read with glasses and I can't read without glasses, so bear with me. That took work because I had to be on the lookout for my father. Had to figure out what he was up to. In Sal Si Puedes, Get Out If You Can, I cut onto his tricks. Our bedroom was on the way to the bathroom without doors to keep him out. Everybody was asleep. I didn't hear him. I just knew it was my father. That night, I might have slept with my sister Felisa. I was on the edge of the mattress, having instructed her to sleep close to the wall. She was about 7 and I was about 12. Because I grew up with Felisa and felt especially close to her. I loved her enough to put myself in her place. I wore cut-off jeans as pajamas. They fit really tight and went really hard and wear really hard to put on maybe jeans that buttoned up. Having long learned to read my father and his moods in order to fend him off, I guessed his target right. He found me instead of Elisa when he reached out to touch between her legs. It must have been hot. I don't remember him removing his blankets. Then when I caught on to his tricks, it wasn't the first time someone had tried to touch me down there. My cousin Ramon had tried and failed by my screams. They scared him away. However, this time the screams did not come easily. Gagging from the panic, I tried to yell, only a "arr" escaped my lips. Froze, pretended to be asleep. Realizing what was happening, I kicked and tried to scare him. Couldn't yell. The screams that could reach my mother's ears wouldn't come out. Knowing he hadn't reached his target, he cursed at me. Pinche cabrona hija de tu puta madre. He was pissed. When he found me fully dressed and realized I wasn't Felisa, he whispered hate-filled maldiciones, cursing loud enough to scare me, but not so loud as to give himself away. Pinche jodida muchacha, ¿qué te crees? Ya verás. In those hate-filled Spanish words he loved to toss around, Juan accused me of thinking myself too big, warning me that I would pay for it. That was wrong. I couldn't obey him with that. It was wrong and it felt dirty. I couldn't put up with it. He left in a huff. My scream finally came out. Ama! Ama! Ama!
So all of us have that alcoholism. My dad was alcoholic and I was in ACOA también. But I didn't go until after my third son was born. And my mom was by herself raising 4 kids. And it's funny about families that have these kind of dysfunctions because they repeat themselves. And I learned that in ACOA. I learned that other kids were called bitch and whore. And I was embarrassed by that and stuff like that until I learned that in ACOA. And I too was incested by my father. I was very young. And those memories didn't come until my daughter turned the age that I was abused. And I went through the incest recovery, which was very, very hard, therapy and all of that kind of stuff. And actually that poem I wrote was after that process. So I'm turning we've already sort of started that, but I'm going to turn more deliberately toward telling how artistic expression has served your healing. We've already addressed that. I have been a journal writer since I can remember. I'm writing my second book on my journey in my profession as a woman in engineering. And the interesting thing about my career as an engineer is that I could separate my emotional and psychological self from who I was at work, because math made sense, science made sense, and I could do that. I could be two people almost. And my life's journey is to try to join those two people. And part of that has been through some of the native traditions, because I gravitate towards nature. And I've done 2 different vision fasts. I've gone, in 2014, after the thing happened with the family, I went on it was a year-long program where I was camping every quarter for about, a week or more. And we would do basically some of the indigenous and healing with the nature. But poetry for me, and I still can't make entire sense from an academic perspective of poetry, because poetry for me is almost like the Holy Spirit downloading something in my head and then it comes out. That's one of my goals, is to become a real poet. When I grow up, I'll be a real girl. No, I'm just kidding. And so that part of it is, but dancing has always been a part of my life. Singing, more dancing, but I sing and I sang in choir at Newman Center, and I danced as a liturgical dancer. But now I'm at the Arthur Murray and I do dancing there. I'm going to read one little passage. One of the things that you're hearing in this little circle, and I love it, is that sense of the veil not being very, very, very thin between us and what most people can't perceive. The spirits, the help, the people that have gone before us. It's right there. And I want to say, Josie, that experience of trauma and just what do they call it? Where you're terrorized on a daily basis. I felt that from my mom, but it wasn't sexual, and I was really, yeah. And my dad had left by the time I was 8, which, when the memories came back to me of what he did when I was 5.5, I was glad he left. I mean, that was one of the thankful things, is I'm glad my mom left. As hard as it was to live with my mom, I'm glad my dad left, But I wanted to read just a section of that sense of where the veil thins in these times of trauma, and you lean into it. You don't avoid it. There's people in my family that don't like the fact that I wrote this book. It's much easier to find a scapegoat, and that scapegoat be the one that our family is all better if it weren't for that person, kind of thing. And it's just not right. And I'm a systems thinker. The systems in the situation, the misogyny. I mean, one of the things that I, want to scream from the top of the roof is that this country was founded on genocide, slavery, racism, and misogyny. And we have not moved beyond that. And until we heal it, doesn't mean we have to give money to everybody or anything like that. If we acknowledge it and move on, and we keep going to the same place, and until we digest it, until we metabolize that as a nation and understand it and realize that it's a systemic thing, we will never heal as a country. We will never heal. So this is something that happened to me in this time when I was, helping my nephew go through the medical stuff, because he had a mental break, understanding his healing there, getting him through school, because, at 17, he was testing as a 3rd grader. They were supposedly homeschooling him. And there was so much legal. in the midst of this, and even still today, it happens more when I'm in this kind of, you just went through a tragedy, Josie. The visitors come more often, and I almost feel like the pressure changes in my room. And when I feel that sense of presence, I just ask, who's here? Or what do you want? But this is one night that happened with my brother. My brother Tom visited me Tuesday. I heard and felt the presence of someone in the house, a somewhat common feeling for me. I was afraid at first, but then I went into the living room. It was my brother. His presence was unmistakable. I could feel the largeness of his body, and he was sitting and leaning with his elbows resting on his legs that were spread apart and his hands together near his mouth. It was a familiar posture. I think he knew I was frightened. He looked very casually in my direction, but did not move or say anything. I ran back to my room. I was frightened at first. I knew my brother wouldn't harm me, but still, he was visiting from the other side. I finally calmed myself and asked, "What do you want? Why are you here?" He came to my room. I could feel him cross the room, and he came to my bed. He leaned in close. And he leaned in close to my cheek, as tender as a parent kissing a child goodnight. He said to me in his quiet voice, "I'm sorry for all this. I'm really sorry." Then he said, "I love you, Gina." I said, "I love you." And tears came. His presence lingered, and I fell asleep. So my brother was tortured in many ways. I talk about it in the book. My mom, my sister-in-law, his journey as a man, which is a hard one for a lot of the Hispanic males. I'm sure it's hard for all the males. And there is a crisis, I think, in our country, in the men, because in the ages, I'm a survivor membership lead for Moms Demand Action, and I'm an activist for gun sense laws. And I saw a graphic recently. In the ages 15 to 24, 40% of all deaths in that age range are either suicide or homicide. We have to own that as a country. We have to own that as adults in this country. Suicide or homicide kills 4 out of 10 15 to 24-year-olds. And most, 92%, I think it is, of all mass shootings are committed by young men 25 and younger. It is tragic. It is embarrassing. It is incomprehensible. And we are the mothers of these kids, How do they get so damaged? Why do they do that, That's where the healing comes in. So you've heard a little bit about the creativity and the activity that we do. Lake Nature is a place where I find solace and inspiration. And so I want to move on to another question. In what ways are we contributing to the healing of our family and our community and becoming an agent of transformation? I sort of mentioned, Moms Demand Action. I became very active as an activist and, going to the Capitol and stuff for that and for juvenile justice. I've always been active in my professional society, but it's different doing it for these kind of causes. And I know that you have been an activist for many years. So how are you an agent of change based on your own pain and trauma?
In 2018, I run a bookstore in Las Cruces. I hope you'll all come. We're by appointment basis because I'm wrangling about 45 cats and my husband, but do come. Someone came into the bookstore looking for a Spanish-English dictionary in 2018, and I had to follow the trail. I said, where is this going? It was for migrants and refugees. And from 2018, we've given away 40,000, 50,000 books in a program called Libros para el Viaje, Books for the Journey. We've gotten books from the American Booksellers Association. Sandra Cisneros would send me a box. Children's Book Council, Reforma, the Latino librarians. I cannot stop the influx of books. My sister Margot, who's here, thank you for joining us, Margot, brought me 15 boxes of books recently, and 5 boxes of books came from a professor at UTEP. I'm inundated with books, and those books go out to refugees, migrants. We were first meeting at the Peace Lutheran Church in Las Cruces. Then we were at La Quinta, where the migrants were being held, and now we went to the Mother House. What is happening to the immigration situation? We're in deep trouble. We're in deep trouble if Fort Bliss is going to be holding migrants and refugees. And also they want to do that here in Albuquerque, in Kirtland. They want to hold refugees and migrants, and that can't happen. We cannot be holding and penning up our children, but we did take books. When the children were there and they came into the room, the most popular books were the Bible, religious spiritual books, and a Spanish-English dictionary. But I have memories of books saving lives under the bridge in Juarez. People are living under the bridge. They're washing their clothes in a spigot of water, and the clothes are drying on bushes and trees. And out of the midst of this place, this young man, he was a young man, maybe in his early 20s, and he asked me, Señorita, because Mexicanos are always very generous, and if you're 99 years old, they'll still call you a señorita. I appreciate that. Señorita, por favor, usted no tiene unos libros del cine. He was looking for books on film. He's living in a tent underneath the bridge, washing his clothes with a spigot of water. He might have a cold burrito for lunch and one for dinner. Tonight, do you have any books on cinema? A woman from El Salvador on a round table in the Peace Lutheran Church rec room. She saw 3 Isabel Allende books. That was it. Can I take them all? Yes, absolutely. Writing and books save our lives. And I would say that they've saved mine. They've given me hope right now because we're so dark. Whether you're stopping a bus at the checkpoint to check students going to a sports event in Las Cruces, I saw something in the news, 48 people are disappeared here. Is it 48, 49? They don't know where they are. We're sending people to Guantanamo. That is a death knell. We cannot send them over here to places in Otero County. I passed oh my God, many people are going there. It's time to stand up, to do anything you can, whether it's writing, talking, marching, signing a petition, and just standing up for the rights of so many people. Have you noticed the rise in animal abuse? This goes hand in hand with what's happening. So I say, as a writer, as a fellow New Mexico writer, do what you can. Cada momento. Every day. And we're here. The apostolates are here. And I went to Madonna High School, and there were 12 of us in our graduating class. Those are the apostolates. But now I've deemed you the apostolates with one. I think there's 13 or 14 now. But do what you can, because art and writing saves lives. I'm thinking that
what saved me was language and the capacity to speak and to not be afraid to speak. It cost much physical, emotional, and psychological pain, but somebody had to speak. That's why I was known as La Hocicona. That's why they called me the big mouth, because I always talked or told or challenged. So what I've done is, as a person who wanted to create change, is I spoke truth to power. And it's not to criticize your language, but you know, when I hear the word dysfunction in families, I get like I want to punch somebody. It's not a dysfunction, it's a systemic design to put a patriarch in charge of a group of people who are subordinate to them and whom he commands and instructs, and a wife who is his slave. That's the kind of family I grew up in. My mother was a victim of Stockholm Syndrome. She never could see that there was abuse in the home. The first question people ask me when I do a public reading is, why didn't she leave? Are you stupid? A woman who doesn't speak English, who doesn't have a job, who doesn't know how to drive, who relies on everything for that man who was my father. He's dead, gracias. You know, it's the system of what we call family, and we uphold as valued in relationship to men. Look around, how many men are in this audience? How many men are present to hear about this? So the family as a system is an imagined ideology that doesn't resemble what we imagine. More single parents are permeate in the structures of family than the one we grew up to believe we needed to have. Mother, father, stay-at-home mother, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that we need to think about it. We need to look at it, and we need to see how it is that we can change it. The way I have tried to change it is with the word. The way I have tried to change it is by teaching and giving access to readings that allow people to critically examine the environment in which they live and how we blindly follow the power structure of the household and relent to countless types of abuses, if not incest, if not some type of sexual abuse, domestic violence, physical violence, emotional violence. You know, in my town where I grew up as a little girl, I was given nicknames that valued me for being a talker, for being a person who spoke, for being a person who gave her opinion. That was not the case in my home. The saying was, calladita se ve más bonita. With your mouth shut, you are more beautiful. Don't speak. That word is, you know, that saying still goes around. So we need to ask questions about the structures of things. We need to ask how come there's so much abuse against children. You know, Ukraine, the Russians took a bunch of girl and boy children to Russia. Where are they? Nobody can find them. You know, are they being serving as sex slave? What's going on? Children can disappear and we don't do much about it. We think they're ours and that they need to walk by our tomb. Trauma has been part of my life, and I just deal with it as it comes. My nephew committed suicide on the 11th of this month.
Josie, put that with you.
My nephew committed suicide on the 11th of this month. And there was no clue. But you know what? As somebody who got trained in clinical social work, if I had been around, I could have seen all the signs. He scheduled a dinner date with his older brother and his mother to say goodbye to them without telling them goodbye. He went to my mother's house to tell her how much he loved her and that he missed her, and he was glad to be there. After that, he went to where my sister lives and holds the ashes of his father who died last year to have a conversation with the spirit. We didn't know that it was in preparation to that. It's something I found out after the fact. my sister told me. He was in such pain, and he was suffering so much. He decimated his entire body with a knife and bled to death. In an apartment, all by himself, without anyone's support. And I don't blame anyone, including myself, because he was in pain and he didn't want anybody to know about that pain. You know, two years ago, he was diagnosed as being bipolar. How many Mexican Americans in poor communities do you know who will get diagnosed for being bipolar? They don't understand. They just live with the disease and do the best they can. And when he tried the medication the psychiatrist prescribed, it intensified the suicidal ideation. So instead of helping him, it exacerbated the condition. Thank you for being here. Another way that you can help is by taking the word out. Another way that you can help is by speaking. By speaking. You'd be amazed that when I was a professor at the University of Texas at San Antonio, how many people would read my book and come and tell me that that happened to them. And they have never told anyone. Those are the kind of secrets we're taught to take with us and to not ever share, because the family would look bad. Even when there are people who were incested as a ritualistic activity inside of faith, I've ended up having to deal with those situations. So keep giving of yourself and speak truth to power, because right now things are so painfully bad. We need to continue doing something about changing this world into a better place. Thank you.
So that notion of speaking truth to power, my brother, who's very well known, he always tells me the same, similar type of things. And I'm sorry for what happened to your nephew. I really. It makes me want to read a poem, and I hope, in your correction on dysfunction, I agree with you. It is a system by design,
With a hierarchy and a structure of who's the boss and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I was a clinical social worker, and I did counseling with families, and that was the first model that went out the door, and I taught it mine.
Right. So this is a poem I'm going to read, and then I want us to move, and I'm sort of in the way moving, because how are you continuing, the next question is, how are you continuing your own healing and the way you take care of yourself, especially in this crazy time? I mean, you open up, I get the New York Times newsletter every day, and I read through it almost like I'm doing penance, walking on my knees to read this stuff, because it's painful. It's really painful. But this is one of the submissions I did for the contest was called, don't ask, when tragedy strikes, don't ask why, ask what's mine to do. And that's the question I'm sitting with right now in terms of what's happening to our nation, because it doesn't help me to go nuts inside emotionally or psychologically. But this is a poem I wrote after what happened to my family. It's called Why. I don't need to know the answers. There are no right answers for most whys that matter. This monkey mind will try, so heroic in its futile attempt. More pathetic is when the ego steps in. I'm the boss here, and I know why. Be wary of when resolution comes too soon. The easy explanations are usually wrong. Occam's razor assumes the hidden is visible, that there is only one truth, and ignores our dance with the ego. Easy answers bed down the fear of vulnerability. They are palliatives for those who will not cross the gorge of transformation. They serve as distractions for a society that is stuck. They solve nothing, instead confuse and isolate. So in my own healing, like, you know, dealing with, you know, because I'm a survivor membership lead, and I hear about my good friend Diana, who lost her son when somebody came and shot up a Halloween party. And the young boys that were with her son, that were his friends, realized as they were running away from the bullets that he wasn't with them, ran back, found his body, tried to resuscitate him. They realized he was dead. And then they went to Diana's house. She's a single mother as a teacher. And they had the blood of her son on their hands and told her what happened. I mean, these stories, and I hold a space for the survivors. And sometimes it's hard for me, and it's hard for them, you know, to participate in trying to make these, we were trying to pass the assault weapons ban, and the gun side of the equation is, oh, well, we have all this investment in our assault weapons, and, you know, these are the weapons that we like to keep to protect our home, and it's all bullshit, you know, it's all this notion, because guns came in our culture to control the native people and to do slavery. That is the history of guns and our attachment to guns, quite frankly. So when I have to step back, first of all, it's very, very, very important to have some kind of meditative process. It doesn't matter what it is. Sitting down, learning how to breathe, being in touch with your body. Dance for me is an exercise in being present in the moment. That is where I'm freed, and I take care of myself there. Like I said, being a part of nature is a big part of taking care of myself. But sometimes I have to just do this to my husband because he'll just want to talk about every bad thing that's happening in the world. And you have to learn how to shut it off periodically, or else you will go crazy. And pick your battles, as they say. You know, that's in all areas of your life. You know, either being a parent, at your job. You know, I hear about Catherine's story at her job. Pick your battles. Otherwise, you become exhausted, and you can't give when you don't take care of yourself. So it's important to understand where your limits are. It's important to understand the things that bring you solace. Dance is my freedom. Nature. I walk 3 miles most days in the bosque. Thank God I live near the bosque. And you know, some people have animals, and I think your animals are probably part of your salvation too. Hold on a minute. Oh, so it's your turn to talk about how you heal and take care of yourself.
Well, I would say animals. I have feral colonies. And it happened one night when a cat froze to death on my friend's porch. And she told me about it, and I said, this will never happen on my watch. If there is an animal down the street dying in the bushes and my cousin goes out every day and watches him, I said, you're watching that animal die? What is wrong with you? Why haven't you stepped out? I think of someone like Barry Lopez, the writer, may he rest in peace. He came to our book festival that I ran for 20 years. He always had a shovel in his car because you never know when you were going to encounter an animal, a carcass, somebody that had died. He did not want that animal to be run over and run over and run over. He would take that shovel, move that beautiful animal to a quiet space. It was respect for life. So I have a shovel in my trunk. I'm burying people all the time. And I think out of respect, there were two black dogs driving up from Las Cruces. When I was in Santa Fe, that was my last trip north, I counted all the descansos from Las Cruces to Santa Fe. Folks, there's hundreds. And they were all lives. They were people. And we say hello We bless those animals. You're loved. So I think it's that ongoing respect for life. So that's how I do it. But I wondered if anybody had a question out there. Are we doing questions? Maybe.
Yes, we have 5 minutes.
If anybody has a question, I'm going to let Josie answer that, but respect for life. Así es.
I'll defer to the questions.
Okay. Does anybody have a question or a comment? I love all animals. I love dogs, too. We had birds growing up, and they were always named Bing. It's Bing Crosby. Until my mother one of the Bings was sick, and she gave him an aspirin. It did not work, okay? So any questions, any commentary? We're gonna be here all day. Please come up, say hello, give us a hug. We'll hug back. And I want to thank Rosa out there for coming over to my bookstore and taking a picture of Mia, our bookstore cat who's passed. She's on the little altar. So Rosa, thank you for loving Mia. And if you have any commentary, please. Yes, dear.
So I guess my question is with New Mexico Press Women, well, how do you foresee this organization being able to disseminate information to people in our state or be able to share, to share the important work that you guys are talking about right now?
I think a lot of our authors do. You were the contest chair, I'm sure you saw some of the titles. You know, there's a lot of articles, columns that some of the women are doing that are part of this organization. Just continue to speak the facts, the kind of information that's getting out there that's on the right. You know, I sadly read it. You know, we have this friend that we visit as we're walking every day. He's a 6-foot man that's in his 70s. He's white. And we got into this conversation, and he honestly thinks himself a victim. He is unhappy with the fact that there's too many colored people on commercials.
People of color.
People of color on commercials. The kind of stuff that's being fed to the dominant culture, the dominant sex, or gender, is incredible to me. And I was dumbfounded. My husband argued with him, but I was literally dumbfounded. He had looked at the Olympics and said, people that see our Olympics, they must think we're a fag nation. And then at one point told me, I was saying, but I'm an engineer and I go by statistics. And I told him, women and children are in the poverty. If you look at the statistics, the poorest people are dominantly women and children. And he says, well, that's because Johnson passed the law to give welfare, and women just started opening their legs. I mean, this stuff came out of an average white male who has maybe $1 million home and a pension. Where are they getting this stuff? We've got to do a counter narrative. We've got to write columns. We've got to write letters to the editor. We've got to put out film, documentary, alternative that is fact-based, for one thing. I mean, I am dumbfounded for how to respond to some of that kind of brainwashing that's happening. And you guys know the media outlets that do that brainwashing as well as I do. I just was shocked, quite frankly. So we need to create the counter narrative to that kind of stuff using facts. Not that they necessarily will follow, but there's a lot of people that are, that are open.
How would you answer that? How the press women can
How press women? Well, I think we need to revive the chapter in Las Cruces. And I want you to all come down. We'll have a coffee, a meet and greet. Let's get those margaritas out. And whatever it takes, chocolate. I have had not one drink here, but we've been hitting that ice cream place. You know, after a certain age, you don't want a margarita. You want that hot fudge sundae or that root beer float. So let me invite you to Las Cruces. Let's begin. We have a lot of energy going there, and we need to revive. Cassie McClure was the president, did a great job. She's in city council and ready to move on. Let's get her back in the fold. She should be here. Damian Willis, where are our stalwarts? We need to really get into the trenches of community. And so let me invite you and I'll help you host that. But as far as this panel goes, it's just been incredibly beautiful. I want to thank my co-panelists. Josie is my publisher, and she was one of the only people that would take on my book. When so many men and Lute, I thought, hey, this is a book for a lesbian press. Come on now, let's step forward. No, not at all. And I had various men of different ethnic backgrounds say, aren't there any good men in this book? And I said, yes, there's one. There's a really good dog. He's a he's an animal, but he's understanding. Yes, there are good men. There are wonderful men. And our husbands are those men. And so, yes, just keep adelante. And I would say the Buddhist Gaka always keeps me straight from Thich Nhat Hanh. And I remember this wherever I go. Mountain, solid. You know who you are. You know where you belong. You take your mountains with you. The sandias, the organs. Mountain, solid.
And on that we'll end. Thank you for joining us. Hold on a second.
I told you I was an hocicona. I'm not going to not say something.
Okay, but say it with your mic.
Oh, I hate mics unless I'm performing.
Well, I see, but...
Your question is really how can I say it? Perfect.
On point.
No, perfect.
Perfect.
My book was published in 2006 as a reprint by Duke University Press, who's never, ever, 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 ever republished an independent book. This is the first one, and I don't think they've done it since. But the sad thing about it is that my colleagues, professors who are teaching people to see themselves in the reality they live and experience have not used it because they don't want to offend people. Okay, so what I want you to do is take off your offense hat and get the word out. There's a press called Conocimientos Press that is publishing people that would otherwise not be published for the reasons that you heard from Denise. Right now I'm working on a 600-year odyssey, the history of Chinese and San Francisco, and people are saying, what are you doing? You're a Conocimientos Press. Aren't you a Hispanic? I said, no, I'm a Herpanic, and I include Chinese. So, for your information, keep writing about those books, get the word out. If you disagree, it's okay to disagree, and write about it and show us why you disagree. But if you are, in spirit with us and you support the work we're doing, review our books. It won't hurt, I promise.
Well, and I'm just gonna, we always have things. This comes from Cristina Garcia, Las Dos Brujas workshop. And I love this, what she says here, to write until it hurts, until the hurting sings.
That's good. I like that.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll just say, in answer to your question, I'm with the New Mexico Book Association, and one of the things I'm trying to do as a president is to really build relationships with other organizations around the state. So I would like to talk to you, Denise, about sort of involving people more in Las Cruces. We're trying to do more to
New Mexico Book Association, yes.
Yes. But I think it's really important because it's a lot of pressure on individual organizations, but if we're in coalition with each other, we're stronger. So I would like to talk to anybody who's interested in partnering with the New Mexico Book Association and what we can do to continue that partnership.
Yes, partnerships.
Yes. Collaborations are the best thing, is like-minded individuals. We are stronger as in unity. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. So thank you, and thank you to my panelists. Yeah, where you know, where there's brokenheartedness, there's what I could literally feel my heart expand during some of the more brokenheartedness periods, and then you get strong with the scars. So
Thank you, everybody, and let's...
I give hugs for free.
Yes, let's have some coffee and just mingle.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Thank you all so much.